NATO is preparing for war with Russia in 2028. The German defense minister stated this openly. Shock on Polymarket. Foreigners are placing big bets on which other Ukrainian cities the Russians will capture this year. Pokrovsk is effectively lost. Zelensky suddenly announced a restart of negotiations with the Kremlin. Poland has officially accused Russia of sabotaging the railway used to supply weapons to Ukraine. Belgorod region is under attack. In 11 days, the Russians dropped 8 bombs on their own positions. Omsk is on fire. A powerful gas pipeline explosion. A 40-meter pillar of flame. The FSB has uncovered an assassination attempt on Shoigu, a vase with a camera at the cemetery, and a couple of drug addicts. All this coming up in just a few seconds. But right now, please like this video and subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so that... Well then, let's get started. Russia could attack a NATO country as early as 2028. This bold statement was made by German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. According to him, judging by how Moscow is building up its arsenal, last summer may have been the last peaceful one. Contrary to previous assessments about possible Russian aggression against NATO's eastern members starting in 2029, the timing may be earlier. At the moment, there are forecasts that this could happen even sooner. But Pistorius assures that NATO can defend itself and Germany continues to strengthen its defense capabilities. There is more concern in Poland. As the chief of the General Staff of the Polish Armed Forces stated, an attack is being prepared against Poland, and the enemy has already begun preparations for war. Moreover, as reported by Polish media, 3 attacks have already been confirmed on the main track of the major railway line used to deliver aid to Ukraine. These were acts of sabotage. Russia knows exactly where to strike. Here you have reconnaissance drones in action. The last time the track was damaged was on Sunday. A 60-meter-long power line was damaged. The exact stage of the investigation at this moment has not been specified. However, as stated by the spokesperson for the Polish Special Services Coordinator, the sabotage on the railway tracks was organized by Eastern intelligence agencies.
But it's just a coincidence that the border crossings with Belarus opened at the same time as this sabotage. Could this really be a coincidence? I can't say at what stage the officers are currently working, which threads they are connecting, or which threads they are analyzing. Russian intelligence agencies are very interested in this information, where our officers are and in which direction they are moving. That, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is natural. You too, as journalists, have access to certain information. I would recommend exercising greater restraint at this point because this information coming from unknown sources and then being spread by certain channels could be typical Russian disinformation. Russian agencies want to disrupt our society and intimidate people. I assure you, our officers, police, and internal security agencies are keeping their finger on the pulse and will thoroughly investigate this matter.
Do you think an attack on NATO could happen soon? Or do you not believe in that? Share your opinion on this in the comments. Ukraine is preparing for negotiations with Russia and plans to resume them. That's exactly what Zelensky stated. Today, he has scheduled his flight to Turkey. Trump's special representative, Steve Witkoff, is also expected to arrive there. How exactly they plan to resume the negotiation process and whether it makes sense is still unclear. It is also unknown what exactly the parties plan to discuss, because as the Russian side represented by Dmitry Peskov states, Russia has not yet received any information from Kyiv or any indication of readiness to resume negotiations. Peskov also said that perhaps Zelensky was referring to his meetings in Istanbul with the Turkish side and possibly with Witkoff. Peskov also added that Russia is ready for negotiations, but they have clearly not abandoned their desire to seize Ukraine. And yes, there will be no Russians in Turkey. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of our viewers are from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We, Ukrainians, are very grateful to you for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Let us know in the comments under this episode as well which country you're watching us from and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. And now, let's continue. Up next are the most interesting parts. Turkey has long become a prominent player in the context of ending the Russian-Ukrainian war. Erdoğan has always recognized Crimea as Ukrainian. He is ready to host a personal meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Next, more details about Ankara's position and role in our story.
Turkey is making a bold statement. Peace in Ukraine is not just a goal, but an inevitability.
We are working towards ending the war. I hope you will all see it soon.
Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said in an interview with Ahaba that even those who did not want the war to end are starting to think differently.
The war must end. We believe negotiations are inevitable. Personally, I believe that negotiations will resume. Of course, we cannot go into details. This could happen in Turkey. It could happen somewhere else, but I believe that this peace will definitely come. According to
him, for 3 to 4 years there were forces that actively prevented the end of the war. And now a classic turning point has come. These groups are changing their position. Fidan calls the war a war of attrition where neither side can emerge victorious and the losses are enormous, human, economic and political.
Of course, the war must end. That has been our policy from the very beginning. But in America and Europe there were very influential groups that did not want this to stop.
He also emphasizes that diplomacy remains the main path to peace. Turkey believes in creating a peace platform possibly on its own territory. At the same time, Fidan does not reveal all the details for obvious reasons, but he states directly that peace is not only necessary, but inevitable.
Right now, we are living through the darkest moment because both sides are focused on destroying each other's transport and energy infrastructure. They are striking military targets and have reached a stalemate. Now it has turned into a drone war.
In addition, the minister notes the serious burden the war places on European countries. Funding military aid is destabilizing budgets. Money is being spent not only on defense, education, healthcare and infrastructure are suffering.
The European side is not actively participating in the war by sending troops, but it is constantly involved in the war with its money and support. And that comes at a high cost. The blockade of Russia, you don't buy energy, you don't trade with it, with Russia. You have to pay for that.
However, Fidan also sees obstacles. According to him, the main one remains the status of the Donbas territory, specifically control over the territories of the so-called DPR. He warns that any settlement must be realistic, taking into account the situation on the front and the interests of both sides. At the same time, Turkey is ready to play an active role. Fidan states that Ankara will not refuse any role in the peace process and that negotiations must be long-term and effective.
Winter is ahead of us. What we see now is that in fact we have all the conditions for peace, for a ceasefire.
If we believe the Turkish Foreign Ministry, right now may be the closest point to a halt in fighting, to a shift toward diplomacy.
I think this war is now going through its worst point, because both sides are focused on destroying transport and energy infrastructure. Now it has turned into a drone war. No one can move anywhere. Only those who disregard losses are advancing.
An important warning from Fidan. A peace platform is possible, but unpleasant decisions, including territorial ones, may be part of a future agreement.
Meanwhile, fierce fighting for every inch of Ukrainian land continues on the front line. For some foreigners, the war has turned into a game of chance. Just listen to this. The Polymarket platform has opened betting markets on which Ukrainian cities Russia will be able to capture. At the same time, foreign gamblers are not outraged by the war itself, but by the fact that maps, particularly those from the Institute for the Study of War, are ruining their predictions. Ukrainian cities are under threat of destruction by Russia. Somewhere out there, for example in New York, someone is upset because of the wrong red line on the map. I'm just at a loss for words. And at the same time, here's the real situation from the front. The Russians continue to put pressure on linemen across the entire gray zone and are fortifying positions east of Yampol, according to deep state analysts.
The situation east of Yampol is unfavorable, where the enemy is digging in among the trees. They are fortifying their positions there and constantly trying to enter the settlement, especially taking advantage of worsening weather conditions.
As a soldier with the call sign Mochnoi writes, the situation in the Alexandrovsk direction in Dnipropetrovsk region has become more intense. The settlement of Hai is effectively lost. The Russians are already inside and are using it as a bridgehead.
The logic from here is simple. The enemy will most likely push to take Otradne in order to secure a clear flank and gain control over part of the highway. This is critical for them because the road could become a direct logistical corridor to Alexandrivka. From Hai to the farthest point of this bridgehead is about 6 to 10 kilometers. And that's a tiny distance, considering that the enemy is now rapidly increasing their pace.
The military is advising civilians not to delay evacuation. The situation is literally heating up, right before our eyes. In Pokrovsk, as Mochnoi reports, the situation is such that the number of Russians is growing every day, while our ability to hold the defense is steadily decreasing. In
the northern part of the city, the Russians have become more active, entered the Shcherbakova settlement area and pushed the line forward by about 700 meters. Our fighters immediately blocked their advance. But beyond that, there's a gray zone where they regroup, set up resistance points, and push forward in small groups. Let's look at things realistically. We don't have the strength to retake the whole city. Local clearing operations and counterattacks don't achieve the results we're aiming for. And for the sake of appearances, it's not much. Filming just to stand out, but for whom? It's all very simple. The city is gradually breaking away. What else is there to say? To be continued, the battle for other lines will follow, just like before. A year ago, 2 years ago, and so on.
Melitopol is also under constant pressure. Russian FABs are targeting residential districts, carving out corridors for themselves among the apartment blocks. As Muchnoy notes, the Russians have already occupied certain buildings in the outskirts and are trying to advance further. At the same time, on the front line, Ukrainian defenders from the 413th Raid Regiment discovered another batch of Russian combat robots, which were supposed to strengthen their logistics and evacuation efforts in a critical sector of the front. But after a successful and precise drone strike, the enemy's plans were thwarted. And the defenders of the 10th Army Corps of the Armed Forces of Ukraine refuted yet another fake by Z military bloggers about the capture of the left bank of Kupiansk and the encirclement of Ukrainian troops.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Today is November 16th, 2025. We conducted a sweep of the pig farm because there was information that the enemy was there. The pig farm has been cleared, all basements and hangars have been checked. We also went through and cleared the surrounding forest, but did not find the enemy. Information and PSO. This is proof that we are here.
Plus, there's more good news from Kupiansk. There, the Russians are effectively cut off from logistics. Currently, an operation is underway to eliminate their cells in the northern part of the city. More details about the fighting for Kupiansk in the next segment.
By November 15th, that is the deadline set by the Russian dictator Putin for the capture of Kupiansk. However, the Russian army once again missed its own deadlines and failed to take control of the city. This was stated by the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Currently, Ukrainian units are holding key heights and uninhabited areas both in Kupiansk and around the city.
At the moment, the situation in Kupiansk has been largely stabilized.
There, Ukrainian forces continue an active operation to destroy Russian units in the northern part of the city, where the enemy has been cut off from its main supply routes.
I wouldn't say it's very easy, but considering that they are cut off from their main supplies and cannot receive effective reinforcements right now, they are currently in a much worse situation than the Ukrainian defenders were, even at their lowest point.
To strengthen the defense in the Kupiansk direction, operational reserves have been redeployed, including special operations units with experience in urban combat.
Additionally, it has been possible to significantly stabilize the situation, especially in the key Kupiansk direction. This is a crucial railway station that the occupiers are trying to break through to. They are in dire need of control over this particular logistical component of Ukraine's defense forces in order to use the short logistics route to form a strike group in this direction, which would aim to advance further towards Sloviansk-Kramatorsk along the Oskil River.
And of course, what would it be without Russian fakes? Another masterpiece from the Kremlin. According to the Joint Forces Group, the occupiers received orders to film staged videos, waving the tricolor flag in places where, in reality, only small groups of infantry are present. They even started including flags in supply packages that drones dropped to Russian units in the city. At least one such operation has already taken place. But in reality, this stunt played into the hands of the Ukrainian defenders. It became much easier for operators to detect and destroy the enemy.
Recently, the Russians received an order. They want to show that they're present somewhere to prove something and to show that Putin and the general staff aren't lying. Nevertheless, by doing this, these flags clearly reveal positions they actually don't control. That's why they're trading real prospects if the Russians are in the so-called liberated areas of the ministry for something fictitious. Well, that's typical of Russian propaganda in general, but still.
At the same time, the occupiers have suddenly become much more active in the area of Milove in the Kharkiv region. There, the enemy wants to create a wide so-called buffer zone from Milov to Kupiansk and further towards Vovchansk.
In other words, the occupiers are planning to expand their area of presence in order to create a precedent for a so-called territorial exchange. That is, they will propose Kupiansk, Upensk, and the Vovchansk districts in exchange, respectively, for the withdrawal of Ukrainian units from the controlled areas of Donetsk region.
In Kupiansk, the enemy continues to use scorched earth tactics. This involves the use of army frontline aviation, strikes with bombs on residential neighborhoods of the city, plus the use of the heavy flamethrower system Son-Sepyok.
This is a thermobaric weapon, which is strictly prohibited and banned for use in densely populated urban areas due to its highly indiscriminate and devastating effects.
And while the occupying army searches for ways to capture Kupiansk, their massive assaults, rotations, and constant pressure are not yielding the desired results. The majority of the city remains firmly under the control of Ukraine's defense forces, while the Russians lose dozens of their soldiers every day.
I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a huge horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge everyone to support the armed forces of Ukraine. And if you can't do it financially, write them words of support in the comments. I know they're watching us. Well, in Russia, everything is as usual. Another cringe moment in the Russian army. On the front line, the occupiers are once again using people to carry mines. Just don't laugh. Donkeys. Yes, you heard that right. Real donkeys. Footage with the animals is being published by Z Wine Corps.
What kind of machine is that? How many horsepower? 120s, right, Tash? So,
Is it handling it okay? Isn't it too hard for him?
It's hard for everyone. And
This is yet another cringe moment. It seems that Russians have started healing their wounded not with medicine, but with music. As they say, technology.
There in the mountains lives the majestic snow leopard. And absolutely no one can get there no matter what, under any circumstances. But there was one, he was young and proud, he didn't believe in blindness.
But that's not all the absurdity yet. In occupied Melitopol, the self-proclaimed authorities are taking apartments away from local residents. Social media users report that the property was purchased even before the full-scale war began, and by February 2022, the building was almost ready for use. However, the Russian-appointed authorities refuse to recognize the ownership rights of more than 30 people, even through the courts. Listen to what the apartment owners have to say.
There are more than 30 of us, and each of us acquired our homes honestly, through shared construction agreements and purchase contracts. In 2023, we submitted an application to the Ministry of Property and Land Relations, asking them not to declare our apartments as ownerless. We only received a rejection to our applications a year later. And while we were waiting for a response from MIZO, the building was already fully registered to the government of the Zaporizhzhia region. This is confirmed by an extract from the Rosregister. The people living in the building were asked to vacate their homes. We are also concerned that in another city in our region, the situation is the same for other people.
Under Ukraine, we bought out completely, paid the full amount for 2 apartments. But under this government, they don't want to give them back to us.
We are here in the city of Melitopol, and on Belyaiva Street, they don't want to give us our apartments. One of our apartments is already finished, ready to move in, start renovations, and live there. But they won't give them to us.
Meanwhile, the richest KGB officer in Russia after Putin, Nikolai Patrushev. How did an ordinary bureaucrat become a multi-billionaire? We will tell you all the dirty secrets of the Patrushev clan.
This is how we drink. Look, we found a puddle in the trench, we're scooping it up. Look how many leeches there are. So we do what we can and we'll figure it out later. Our command abandoned us. We've been here for 2 months without food, without supplies, without shells, without bullets, without anything. We're sitting here, but not everyone is. Take us in with you, so to speak. We can't attack because we have nothing to fight with. We can't leave either because they won't let us cross the border.
People are suffering even in the rear. Utility bills keep coming regularly, so the war machine's treasury can be replenished.
There are no private facilities. There is no outdoor lighting in the military town. The roads in the military town leave much to be desired.
All this is happening while Putin's associates are getting rich.
How should we feel about this?
All it takes is to deliver beautiful propaganda speeches to Russians from the TV screens.
Historical facts. It is important to show that pushing Russia away from the Black Sea coast has historically, traditionally been considered one of the key and significant objectives in Anglo-Saxon policy.
While propaganda pours out, the family of Putin's closest associate, Nikolai Patrushev, the former FSB director, longtime secretary of the Security Council, and one of the most influential figures in Russia's security apparatus, is living their best life. The family of Russia's top Chekist turned out to own real estate worth almost 14 billion rubles.
Of course, a comprehensive approach is needed. We're talking about a large-scale project.
Such an impressive collection of elite real estate has been carefully distributed among family members. And especially generously among those who, on paper, have no connection to any declarations. So that no one would find it. But journalists conducted an investigation and made everything public.
The plan amounts to $25 billion. As of today, it has already been exceeded.
Almost half of the assets are registered to Marina Artemyeva, the wife of Dmitry Patrushev. She has managed to give birth to 5 children with him. Dmitry Patrushev is the son of Nikolai. Legally, Marina is not Dmitry's wife.
Which in fact is advantageous for the younger Patrushev, because when he files his asset and property declarations, everything registered to his secret partner is accordingly missing from those declarations.
Artemyeva grew up in a typical one-room Khrushchevka apartment in Elektrostal and worked in ordinary positions. Until, in 2009, an encounter occurred that, to put it mildly, changed the trajectory of her life.
These include estates in Moscow and the Moscow region, as well as apartments with views of the Kremlin.
Just a year later, she became the director of a trendy TV channel. And a little later, billionaire Igor Kisaev, the very same wallet of the Patrushev family, transferred to her a share in world fashion. An extraordinary stroke of entrepreneurial luck, wouldn't you say? Since then, Artemyeva's business has flourished rapidly, as has her real estate portfolio. From 2 apartments across from the Kremlin to plots worth hundreds of millions in the elite Silver Forest in Istra. Plus, office real estate in the skyscrapers of Moscow City. And in 2021, she was so lucky that she got a mortgage at 2% per annum from Roselkhozbank. The head of the supervisory board there, of course, just happened to be her common-law husband.
First of all, it's important to understand that ensuring food security is a continuous process.
Another roughly 4 billion rubles are registered to Nikolai Patrushev's first wife, Elena. Another couple of billion for the wife of the youngest son, Andrei.
Award a medal for loyalty to the Russian fleet. President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Thanks a lot.
Young Vladimir.
Family has always meant a lot to the nobleman Patrushev. After all, they are the ones who hide his billions earned in blood.
I have made a decision to conduct a special military operation.
Patrushev is one of Putin's most trusted associates since the St. Petersburg days of the 1990s. A proponent of forceful solutions.
First of all, it wasn't an explosion. Second, it wasn't prevented. And I think the response wasn't entirely effective. It was a drill, there was sugar there.
Nikolai Platonovich is one of those influential figures who helped to shape and create the very Putin we know today.
We haven't forgotten anyone or anything.
Nikolai Patrushev supports Putin's policies and helps him plunder Russia. And it is Patrushev who feeds Putin. Those very folders that conceal the true state of affairs and the deaths at the front. In Moscow, it seems that even the dead can't rest easy anymore, because at the Troye-Kurovskoye cemetery, according to Russian media, there was an attempt to blow up Sergei Shoigu himself. Yes, you heard that right. Russian propagandists are spreading a story that a group of criminals installed a camera in a vase of the reindeer herder during his visit to his deceased relatives. The ending, as always, is predictable. The FSB reports a brilliant arrest. And of course, they've already found a Ukrainian connection. But who would have doubted it? It is reported that 2 Russian drug addicts were allegedly recruited for the assassination attempt. A migrant from Central Asia and a man from Kiev. Drug addicts, a migrant from Central Asia and a man from Kiev.
Communication devices were seized in which correspondence between the detainees and Ukrainian intelligence officers was discovered. And
so I have a question. What do you think? Was this a real attempt to eliminate Shoigu or just another staged Mosfilm production to boost the security services ratings? Write your thoughts in the comments. Sanctions and attacks on oil refineries are having their effect. According to Bloomberg, the price of Russian Urals oil has collapsed to its lowest level since 2023. Last week, in the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk, which was also recently hit, oil was selling for about $37 per barrel. This is the lowest level since March 2023. Demand for Russian oil plummeted after the US imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil on October 22nd. And for the Kremlin, this is a very serious blow. Footage of a massive fire following an explosion on the main gas pipeline in Omsk in the village of Rostovka. At night, it was brighter there than during the day. Locals report a strong smell of gas in the air. There are dozens of firefighters at the scene. Unfortunately, the Russians managed to handle it themselves, without us. But admit it this way isn't bad either. And now the occupied Donetsk region. In Zugras, strike drones hit the Zuyevskaya thermal power plant at night. After the strikes on the Zuyevskaya and Starobeshevskaya thermal power plants, 65% of consumers in the temporarily occupied Donbas are without power. This was stated by the head of the self-proclaimed DPR, Denis Pushilin. And once again, the Belgorod People's Republic. On Monday night, Ukrainian drones flew in there. As usual, Russian air defense, in defending itself, targeted not the drones, but the local infrastructure. In short, after a series of explosions in the city, the roof of the Vokzalnaya shopping center caught fire. Governor Gladkov stated that there were no casualties, but the blast wave shattered windows in neighboring apartments. Part of the city and nearby villages were left without electricity. Meanwhile, in an intercepted call by the GUR, a Russian woman describes how their own air force is bombing their own population.
Seryoshka, just yesterday 12 people were wounded in Grayvan. Yesterday they burned 2 minibuses, 8 cars, an entire parking lot. Drones attacked the parking lot. There were 4 drones. The cars burned, a fire broke out. They hit the minibuses. 14 to 18 people were wounded. Can you believe it? Yesterday was bad. They also hit Paris yesterday with an alert. In just 11 days, Russian bombers dropped 8 bombs on the territory of Belgorod region. Can you imagine?
Well, you Russians, hang in there, because with air defense and aviation like that, you'd better get insurance against your own army. Because in Voronezh, even during the day, the air defense can't see the targets. That's why things keep hitting there.
Look, do you see it in the clouds?
And finally, here's another interesting story from Russia. The deputy mayor of Voronezh, Lyudmila Borodina, complained about the ungrateful and toxic citizens. Dissatisfied with the situation in the city, and despite having an official salary of 241,000 rubles, the official came to complain about the people carrying a Louis Vuitton bag worth almost 500,000 rubles.
Honestly, I have to tell you, I'm bursting into 1,000 little teddy bears. I don't want to say this, dear participants, but have you ever been to other cities? If you have, then where? Show me. Point with your finger. Where is it cleaner than in Voronezh? Because our people who work both for business and for our citizens are practically working around the clock so that things are good for us. But the level of gratitude and the level of toxicity among Voronezh residents is completely different.
Well, personally, I'm not surprised. Double standards. I wonder how many people in Voronezh know what Louis Vuitton is and how much it can cost. I would really like for this official to become famous. And not just in Voronezh, this is something that is happening in other places as well. The situation we see in Voronezh can also be found in different cities and regions, both nearby and farther away. It is not unique to that city, but is part of a broader pattern that affects many areas.